that rise against us, that war they shall never win. 'Cause I will conquer, oh I will conquer, yes I will conquer, conquer them. Come on, let's conquer, oh I will conquer, rise up and conquer, conquer them.
Thank you, Father. I want to say thank you, Lord. You are everything, Father. Thank you.
Father, you alone shall guide me. No man shall lead my path. In the wind I hear your quiet whispers, and you heal my broken heart. Even some of my friends turn enemies, and they pray for right to fail. And remember you give us your only begotten son, but we gave him the wound of love. Send down your warriors with the hello. They carry down to the end of days. No matter how the devil try trick me, unto you my soul I will give. Father, I know this time is coming. I can see the high tide raise. Without you there is no other. Could it be that we decide? No weapon that form against us shall not prevail. No man that rise against us, the Lord they shall never win. 'Cause I will conquer, oh I will conquer, yes I will conquer, conquer them. Come on, let's conquer, oh I will conquer, rise up and conquer, conquer them. My enemies' walls are bound to crumble, and to the floor their spears will fall. I've been made and sealed with love, but time to battle, I'll find them all. I felt the whips and remember chains, but my sword has been forged by my father's flames. Fight your fears and heal your pain, and victory will be in your name. I used to be weak, but I'm not weak no more. I found the strength of my ancestors deep down in my African core. I used to be frightened, I'm not afraid no more. The Father blessed me with the heart of a lion and a warrior soul. So no weapon that form against us shall not prevail. And no man that rise against us, that war they shall never win. 'Cause I will conquer, oh I will conquer, yes I will conquer, conquer them. Come on, let's conquer, oh I will conquer, rise up and conquer, conquer them. Tell them no retreat, no surrender. I shall fight till the end of days. I was born as a Makai warrior, and the Almighty God my blade. Fire burn all Satan carrier. Father loose all shackles and chain. This morning first thing as I wake up, King David turns Sam to the brain. Don't let your courage go down, keep it up. And if your heart rip up and stitch it up, don't let your faith them fall, pick it up. When my cup was empty, God fill it up. Don't take the devil contract, rip it up. And if your bad mind people to go meet it up, pass me the Congo drum and let me beat it up. God on my side, me no give it up. So no weapon that form against us shall not prevail. And no man that rise against us, that war they shall never win. 'Cause I will conquer, oh I will conquer, yes I will conquer, conquer them. Come on, let's conquer, oh I will conquer, rise up and conquer, conquer them.
Thank you, Father. I want to say thank you, Lord. You are everything, Father. Thank you.
Father, you alone shall guide me. No man shall lead my path. In the wind I hear your quiet whispers, and you heal my broken heart. Even some of my friends turn enemies, and they pray for right to fail. And remember you give us your only begotten son, but we gave him the wound of love. Send down your warriors with the hello. They carry down to the end of days. No matter how the devil try trick me, unto you my soul I will give. Father, the storm is coming. I can see the high tide raise. Without you there is no rudder. Could it be that we live myself? No weapon that form against us shall not prevail. And no man that rise against us, that war they shall never win. Because I will conquer, oh I will conquer, yes I will conquer them. Come on, let's conquer, oh I will conquer, rise up and conquer them. I am a man, I am a champion, I am a warrior. So who are you to tell me that I cannot make? Who are you to tell me that I am not the greatest thing that God ever created?
Good morning, good morning, good morning, Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. You're listening to Hard Talk Grenada. A very special good morning to those of you joining us on 97.5 CitysoundFM, 89.5 CRFM, 92.9 Sister Round Radio broadcasting from Hillsborough, Carriacou, and of course 94.9 We Noise Radio out there in Brooklyn, New York. A very special good morning to those of you joining us on the live video feed, whether it's on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you may be. Pleasant good morning to you. It is a beautiful, beautiful morning in the Spice Isle of Grenada. We're happy to be alive. We're happy to be here talking to you. And of course, we are happy for the sunshine. In studio with me this morning, I have none other than my co-host. And he told me not to say the other things, so I wouldn't say it. My co-host, Mr. Bola. Good morning, Mr. Bola.
Good morning to you, Michelle, and good morning, of course, to the listening public. I've been absent from the program for the last 2 days, but I've been listening and taking in a lot of the discussions. I really do hope that the listening public is having a wonderful morning. It was a gorgeous morning. A little rain up my neck of the woods in the early hours of this morning.
Well, aren't you lucky?
Like 3:30 there, getting into the 4 o'clock hour. Not too heavy, but, keeping the earth a little moist, and that was good for the plants. And if there's good plants growing, of course, the nation should feel happy. That means we are producing food. I hope that most of us are making use of that. So
yeah.
I hope you're having a wonderful day, and it's good to be
It is.
here talking to you again.
It is. Now, guys, as I promised yesterday, we're going to continue the conversation as it relates to the pending merger of GCA and GCNA. And who better to bring it home? Who better to give us the facts and the information? Somebody who has been there longer than even we're now talking about. Mr. Bola is going to provide us with so much information. So if you're a farmer, a friend of a farmer, you know somebody that does do farming, if you are invested in the entire situation, we have a lot of people out there that are invested in it. They want to know what's happening, or some of them want more information. We're advising you, share the program. Like the live, share the live, start a watch party. Let's get the information out there, because you see what happens generally, and we always say that. When it comes to melee and confusion, we're good at sharing that. You're getting it from 50 and 60 different people. But when it comes to good news, positive vibes, and facts, we are very, 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 we're not eager at all, in sharing that. So share the program, like the program. Let's get started in the conversation. Now, Mr. Bola, I don't know if you had an opportunity well, I know if you had an opportunity. We spoke about it. You listened yesterday to the program, and we had put in a call to the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, and we also had a few farmers chime in on the current issue with GCA, GCNA. And there has been a lot of talk on the issue. I've heard more than two sides of the story. I've heard from the GCNA, I've heard from, well, not the GCA, I haven't heard the Cocoa Association come out and say anything. I've also heard from the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. I've heard from various farmers what they believe that is, and I'm still waiting on the GCNA to tell us exactly why they are so against and why they're telling the farmers to stand up and fight against this merger. And I know that you have a lot of information as it relates to that because you were former Minister of Agriculture as well. I know you don't like it when when I say it like that, but it is what it is, Mr. Bola. And you were former Minister of Agriculture, so some of that information would have passed through your hands, So let's chat about this merger, how long it's been going on, and what the real story is behind this merger.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Duncan. And I think we need to make just a slight correction in the statements that you made. I think originally, from what we've been hearing and gathering, there are some resistance that still exists. But I think up until last night, in a news clipping from GBN, the Grenada Cooperative Nutmeg Association would have put a statement out saying that they're not opposed to the merger, but they are battling what is referred to as liberalization of the market. So coming from that, I do not know that it is still true to say, well, I hope it is not. Let me say, I hope it is not true to say that they are anti-merger from the onset, based on a lot of the utterances that we were hearing, especially from the farmers, part of it publicly, like they would call into programs and so. But also on one-on-one discussions, you got the distinct feeling that members of the board of directors and in the management of the operations of the commodity boards, both cocoa and nutmeg, in their deliberation to farmers, gave an impression to them that a merger was a bad thing and that they should oppose it. In fact, yesterday in your program, the farmer who spoke, or one of, not just one, but I think there was a second one who called sometime after when I was listening to the program, did indicate that. But I want to let people know that the issue of merger of the commodity boards did not start last year or the year before, or even the year before that. It's a subject matter that has been in existence now for quite a while. In fact, someone drew my attention back to as early days as when Sir Eric was around. I don't have a lot of information on that, something that I hope to dive into and dig into and to try to pick up some more information. There was some consideration, there were some concerns as to the operations of those boards, those commodity boards, the authority that was placed. And you hear the argument that we are trying to change something that has been in existence, for example, the Nutmeg Association since 1947, and the rationale why it came into existence, because you had a very chaotic, based on what I understand, operation taking place where bigger farmers, in some instances, or producers of nutmeg was buying from smaller producers, and the prices varied. There was not a standard price structure, and deals were being cut, so to speak. I buy for a particular price because it was like a free market system. So the association, based on my understanding, came about, and that may not have been the only rationale, but one of the major reasons was to sort of standardize the quality of the produce and the price that was being paid. So you had an association being formed. Another myth that is out there, and unfortunately, so I've seen some political parties and people heavy into politics jumping in and making statements and talking about the government wanting to hijack and force the merger. We have to be very frank and very open and very truthful when we speak about those issues. And even if we believe that taking a side or picking a side, which is our right, we've always said that here, You don't always have to agree with the government. You don't have to be on the side of the government. You don't have to say yes to everything the government do. But when you oppose, you must oppose giving good rationale. And even if you think by opposing or by taking a stand with one side or the next, there's some political leverage that you can gain or what have you, that is also fine. But be truthful and honest about what you're saying. So to claim that the government is acting high-handed and wanting to hijack is not so truthful. It's not so truthful. I became involved in frontline politics and contested for the very first time in 2003. I actually came into the frontline politics in 2002 as a senator for a couple of months before the 2003 elections. And even before the time that I was involved with the new National Party, the issue of merger of these two commodity boards have been around, has been talked about. I remember in those very early days when Mr. Ramsey Rush was the chairman, and he has been and acted in the position of chairman of both the Nutmeg and Cocoa Association, not at the same time, but at different eras. And who, as early as those days, he was able to marshal the farmers and get them to oppose the idea of merger in a very strong and vociferous way. Yes. So now to conclude that this is something just thrown at the farmers is not absolutely true. As a matter of fact, if one goes back into some of the meetings that was held, like area meetings and AGM meetings and so, many of those was talked about. In fact, I can point to a meeting that I recall. I have some documents here that was held as an area meeting of the Cocoa Association in July of 2017. Where a question was being asked by an ordinary farmer. Mm-hmm. And if I can quote from the minutes, that farmer asked, and I would not call a name, but the name could be provided because he's here. He inquired whether the board objected to some of the issues raised by Compete Caribbean. Now, who is Compete Caribbean? Right? And I'll go back into who is Compete Caribbean now and what that was about. In response, the chairman pointed out that the board, together with selected farmers, not all farmers now, selected farmers, negotiated the best position for the GCNA. Yes? The farmer then recommended that a general meeting of all farmers be held to discuss the proposal by Compete Caribbean and whatever changes that was proposed to the Act, meaning the Nutmeg Act, the Cocoa Act, right? And that was from a cocoa meeting. Now, the mention of Compete Caribbean takes you back even 2 years earlier. In 2015, Compete Caribbean as a regional organization commissioned and paid for a study to be done of the spice industry in Grenada. Mm-hmm. Yes? And I can recall that there was a legal mind out of Jamaica. The gentleman was known as Dr. Macaulay, who came here to Grenada for some time. In fact, he made more than one trip, who looked entirely at both in cocoa and nutmeg ordinance, or the regulations that govern both of the associations. Mm-hmm. But he went further than that. There is also another small association that deals in spices called the Minor Spices Association. Looked into that. He met with members of the board of both Cocoa and Nutmeg Association. He met with the managers at the time. He met with chairpersons separately. He met with individuals in the Ministry of Agriculture and put together a document in which he suggested the merger of not just cocoa and nutmeg, but along with that, the minor spices, and have it being traded as Grenada spices.
Right.
So whatever name you give it. So that was in 2015.
Right.
But even prior to 2015, you had several other studies that was done. Mm-hmm. So, for example, you had a study that was carried out by CEDA some years earlier than that. Then there was also, and the CEDA study was done as early as November 1992. You're talking something being shoved onto the associations now? Absolutely not true. Since 1992, you had CEDA doing a study, and these studies are still around, making recommendations that if we are to progress well, move forward, and to harness the kind of benefits that we can get from these industries, that a merger should take place, amalgamation, right? Because difficulties was being seen since then. You had the Lindell Mills Limited. They did something in 2008. In 2007, you had Mr. Michael Church, who did a paper on the amalgamation of the commodity boards and encouraging farmers to buy into the merger because it will benefit them. There are more advantages than disadvantages in them merging and coming together. Yes? So when one speaks today about a merger, when statements are being made by people who hold a political position to say that the government is being high-handed in the way they are approaching that, and that they are rushing, and that they are forcing, and someone went as far as to say that they brought a document to ask the associations to sign on the dotted lines for merger. Totally untrue. Absolutely unreasonable and unfair. Because I know that a lot of discussion has gone into that. I have been to AGMs of both Cocoa and Nutmeg Association where the issue of merger came up, where questions was being asked by farmers, where very sketchy responses was given to them, and the real facts was never laid out. And that is not fair to the general public with what they're hearing now. Neither is it fair to the farmers themselves.
So Mr. Bola, let's pause there for a moment. So what you're saying is that the conversation of the merger between the spices, not just cocoa and nutmeg, but also the minor spices.
Well, it was suggested that minor spices be involved from the Complete Caribbean study that was done around 2015. But in terms of what was always proposed on the table was cocoa and nutmeg.
Now let's give the association the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that the chairman that is there now was not aware of these studies and so on. What would be your take on that?
Well, Ms. Duncan, I have before me a document that doesn't say or speak to what, and that's a very good question, because that would have been my next jump to talk about members of the association boards and so, who claims, maybe not all, because in recent times you may have new members being appointed or elected to the board, because how do you get onto the board? The farmers would vote in or a certain amount, and the government through the Ministry of Agriculture would nominate or select, probably not nominate, but select 3 representatives, for 3 for the Cocoa Association and 3 for the Nutmeg Association. The other 5, I think, or 6 or whatever the amount is being elected on the floor at the AGM. Now, around, well, to be exact, at a Cocoa Board meeting, which was held on the 21st of December 2017, right? It mandated a committee chaired by a gentleman named, which I will call this time, Mr. Leo Keto, December of 2017.
Right.
At a meeting, it was mandated that a committee chaired by Mr. Leo Keto, and I'm reading verbatim now, member of the board of directors and chairman of the GCNA, to examine the prospective pros and cons of a merger between GCA and GCNA.
Now, based on what the permanent secretary said yesterday, he said that a committee was formed so that they can assess the entire situation.
You are now fast forwarding to 2020.
Right. No,
I will get to that.
I just want to ask this question because what Mr. Cato is saying, or what he said, what the permanent secretary said, Mr. Cato said, was that they should go now to the farmers and do exactly what you're speaking about now, where in 2017 that should have already been done.
Well, listen, I did read to you previously, or read to the hearing of the public previously, that at a meeting held in, where was that first one that I read about? It was in 2017, the Florida school. Then they went to another meeting at Victoria St. Mark's on the 4th, 2017. And in that meeting, there was a farmer early in 2017, not even December. This year is a committee that was formed in December of 2017. But we had a thing here from the 4th of July. We had meeting here held on the 3rd of July in Florida, and then one in St. Mark on the 4th, where a farmer asked in that meeting about the Compete Caribbean report that Dr. Macaulay, which I spoke about 2 years earlier in 2015, completed when he suggested that minor spices should be a part of the amalgamation or the merger, right? And that farmer recommended that a general meeting of all farmers be held so that that proposal put forward by Compete Caribbean should be discussed. And I did say that prior to that, you had other, you had the European Union, who commissioned a study long before 2015. You had Mr. Michael Church in 2017 thereabout, who did something. You had other reports, right? That was spoken about. But I'm telling you now that you asked the question about members of the board who say that they may not have been aware or fully understand or fully informed. So I'm telling you now that at a meeting held in December 2024, right, it was mandated that a committee chaired by Mr. Leo Keto, who was then a member of the board of directors of the Grenada Cocoa Association, but also at the same time, he held the position as chairman of the Grenada Cooperative Nutmeg Association. So he was wearing two hats. The two commodity boards. He was a member of the board of directors of cocoa, but he was the chairman of the GCNA at the same time, right? He was mandated to chair a committee to look and to examine the prospects and to come up with the pros and cons of a merger between the two commodity boards, right? It is reported here that the committee, and what I'm giving you now is what came from Mr. Keto as the chairman. A 6-page document. That committee met on the 28th of December 2017. During its deliberations, the committee thought it was prudent to expand the mandate to include a review of the past efforts to merge the associations and examine the present status of the cooperation between GCA and GCNA. So while at the meeting, the mandate was to look at that proposal that came from Compete Caribbean in 2015. When they met for the first time, a couple days later, 7 days after they were mandated, they took the position that they should broaden the scope. And it was more prudent to include the review of other studies that was done. And they spoke about both organizations have similar farmer base with similar challenges, right? which is one of the principles why government has been saying, look, why not merge? Because you are serving the same set of farmers. They themselves said that in the meeting. They say both organizations have similar farmer base with similar challenges. They cultivate crops and there are synergies to each other. Right. They have similar structure. The corporations have similar structure. There are at least 2 common directors on the 2 boards. The chairman of GCNA board and the chairman of GCA board. That's what they said in their meeting, Not a meeting that government asked them to have, It was a meeting and a committee put together as a result of a cocoa meeting that was held on the 21st of December. Here it is that they're saying, look, we have commonalities.
Right.
Because there are 2 members that serve on both boards. The chairman of the Cocoa Association is a member of the Grenada Cooperative Nutmeg Association Board. The chairman of the Nutmeg Association is a member of the Grenada Cocoa Board. They said it's highlighted here, it's in writing.
And that was a study done in 20...
No, that was not a study. That was a committee mandated by the Cocoa Association to study the pros and cons of a merger.
And when was this done?
In 2017.
In 2017.
Right?
Okay.
But let me just give you quickly what they concluded. And I can tell you a lot of other things. They talk about administration. They say one general manager. And that's another important thing. And I heard the PS spoke about that yesterday. So we're fighting merger. And what merger wants says, okay, one board to control both. Because it's the same set of farmers.
Right.
You'd have one manager, you'd have one accountant, you'd have one secretary, as it is now. The farmers are paying a separate manager for GCNA and a separate manager for GCA. GCA has an accountant, GCNA has an accountant. But it's the same set of farmers, and they highlighted that here from that same committee. Here's what it says here. At the moment when that was happening, when that committee was meeting, one general manager serves both organizations, and there was a time from around early part of 2017 or late 2016, when the same person who was the general manager of the Grenada Cocoa Association and still is the general manager of the Grenada Cocoa Association was also acting as the manager of the Grenada Cooperative Nutmeg Association. The same individual working as manager for both organizations, which is what merger is asking you to do. You merge, one person will do it. So they were already highlighting some of the things. They talk about similarities where the same set of farmers under the same condition growing broad crops, right? There are commonalities in the marketing of both crops. Yeah. GCNA agents in Europe also purchase cocoa from GCA. Not me saying it. The document is here. A document written up by a committee chaired by the present chairman of GCNA. So they're saying the agents in Europe, who we as GCNA deal with to market our nutmegs, also deal with the Grenada Cocoa Association to market their cocoa. But here what? GCNA is paying a fee to these agents for marketing their produce, which is nutmeg. GCA is also paying the same agents a fee to market the cocoa. So you see the wisdom in Dr. Macaulay saying, why not market as Grenada spices? Right. So the same agent get one fee now to market cocoa, to market nutmeg, to market spices, the other minor spices like cinnamon and cloves and the other thing. The two organizations presently share one extension service. Now, these are things coming out as a result of a committee put together, right? So the same extension officers that serve GCNA also serve GCE.
Right.
And they go on to tell you what are the pros and cons. He said one of the pros is that 80% of cocoa farmers are also nutmeg farmers. That is the documentation. Yeah? Both organizations have significant asset base. Both organizations have significant financial liabilities. Similar field work and administrative operations. The budgetary considerations that they had, they said both of them had to pay severance to the workers. there would have been opportunities for cost saving. They would optimize the assets that they have if they amalgamate it, if they come together. That is what they said for themselves. Not government saying nothing. But what is important, I like here what they said. Recommendations on the way forward to merge GCA and GCNA. The first recommendation, they say, government should take an active role in the merger instead of taking a passive position.
They said that.
In 2017, a document from a committee chaired by Mr. Leo Keto, the same gentleman who is the chairman of GCNA today. They said, consideration number one, government should take an active role in the merger instead of taking a passive position. Now today, government is taking an active role. The same people turn around and say government is acting high-handedly, that they want to hijack the association. You suggested. They said here, and in the news yesterday, that, we're not opposed to merger, but to capitalization. Number two,
liberalization.
Liberalization.
Okay.
Right? So, they said farmers should be placed at the forefront of the merger, of course, which government says. Go back and I will tell you, minister met in 2019. Well, she was unable to make the meeting, but she called a meeting in which the permanent secretary, and he spoke about it yesterday, where they were asked to go and meet with the farmers. But I also read earlier on, where as early as June of 2017, that particular farmer said, shall we have a general meeting to discuss the pros and cons? Then in December, they say, put this committee together. And these are things that the committee is suggesting. Right? Anyway, let me go to what I really, really want to just conclude on that piece of document. In conclusion of that 6-page document that was sent out as a result of the association asking to be chaired by Mr. Keto, it says, since 1990, that is them speaking now, commodity boards has been through many failed merger attempts. Since 1990, we are in 2020, right? So who now says that this is a sudden and urgent thing? This is them saying it. From Cedar to the Landell Mills report, nothing happened. And I spoke about those reports before.
Right.
There seems to be no real urgency or reason to merge the Cocoa and Nutmeg Association. Mm-hmm. During this study, meaning that the committee study now, it was observed that merger was never given the kind of attention it deserved. It was not seen as an economic activity critical to the survival and success of the Grenada agricultural sector. Now they're saying, they, Mr. Keto and his team, saying that the merger was never seen as critical to the economic success of the agricultural sector. Today, government is saying to you, we have studied, we recognize we need to put more effort, and in fact, you said that we should not take a passive.
Right.
But we should be more present and more urgent with it, and we're being urgent now, and you're complaining and you're quarreling. Yeah? Historically, I continue, merger is only remembered when the commodities are in difficulty. In the early 1990s, when nutmeg prices hit rock bottom, Cedar was asked to investigate the possibility of a merger. That is in the early 90s. Yeah? It continues, and I'll just read that and finish. Again, when 90% of the crop was decimated by Ivan and Emily, merger again took center stage. In 2011, on the onset of a financial meltdown, an investigation or wrongdoings, guess what? Merger was called again. Presently, the GCA, meaning the Grenada Cocoa Association, is experiencing acute cash challenges brought about by depressed market conditions. And in this instance, the government asked for the merger of both commodities. Right? That was in 2011, Right. They make mention of government asking for the merger. During our investigation, this is the committee speaking, we found that lots of useful studies have been concluded on the merger of the commodity boards. What was lacking was not the absence of information, but the inability of all parties to make the next step. One critical area cited for the failure was the notable exclusion of farmers in the process. Sadly, this is the determining step to often overlook by over 2 decades. One thing is for certain. In the present state of these organizations, failure is a reality. Both companies lack the necessary cash flow to undertake the quantum of investment in production that is so urgently required. I want to read that last paragraph again, that the committee concluded.
Right.
One thing is for certain. In the present state of these organizations, failure is a reality, meaning that the financial and managerial state of both Cocoa and Nutmeg Association, if it continued that way, failure is what they will definitely get.
It's doomed to fail.
Right? And they went forward to say both companies lack the necessary cash flow to undertake quantum investment in production that is urgently required. So this alone by itself, coming from a committee set up by the associations, tells a complete story. And I mean, I can go on and on and on of several other things that happened.
So we're saying that over the years, the merger has been a discussion, and it has always been the agreement of the Cocoa and Nutmeg Association that a merger of the two bodies are necessary.
Of course.
So I listened last night to the news, and I heard the same thing that you heard, where Mr. Cato is now saying that they are not against the merger, and that is beside what they've been saying the week before, where government is trying to force this merger down their throats. But he is now saying that they are for the merger, but they are against the liberalization. Now, what is the difference, Mr. Bowler, between the two of them?
Okay. Now, the merger is a coming together, hopefully, of the two commodity boards, where you would slash a lot of cost as a result. Because as they highlighted, I oftentimes used to say 90% of who grow cocoa grow nutmeg. But they said, and they probably have better figures than me, 80%. So 80 out of every 100 farmer in Grenada has both cocoa and nutmeg. 8 out of every 10 farmer in Grenada has both cocoa and nutmeg and sells to both commodity boards.
Right.
They highlighted some of the similarities. That the agent that markets cocoa also markets nutmeg in Europe.
Right.
So that farmer is paying through his proceeds to the associations, agents in Europe to market our cocoa, and the same agents to market the nutmegs.
Right.
One person.
Right.
Any wise businessman in Grenada, not an association, take Hoggins for example. If they are going to ship things to Europe or the USA and they have an agent, that agent will act for all the products
Right.
that they ship. You're not going to pay one agent for this and another agent for that. I mean, multinational corporations worth billions of dollars, they are coming together, they are joining. Ford company as done in the manufacturing of vehicles. And Mazda, some years ago they came together, not because either of them were not making a profit, but they recognized the competition, that the profit margin were getting smaller.
Right.
So they merged. They reduced the workforce. They reduced the management team. They reduced the engineering team.
So Mr.
And
Bowler,
they're making money.
So, Mr. Bowler, put simply, it's like saying, I'm buying a car from a company, but I have to buy the body one place and the wheels another place.
Well, something like that. Something like that. Yes, that could be used as a scenario. But what in short, we are saying, and also the committee highlighted that, look, you have people not just 80% of our farmers doing both products. We market them separately. We pay different agents. We pay different managers. We pay different accountants. We have different staff. We sell almost the same. We put it into bags, sew it up, weigh it, make sure that it's cured, and send it away. Now, who loses at the end of the day? It's the farmers.
Right.
So everything about merger is to give the farmers a stronger hold. Now, I've heard on some of the programs, I've heard farmers talking about what's about my asset and my interest. Now, where is your asset? The only thing you have as an asset in the association is the piece of land that you now cultivate and the product that you sell to the association. There is nothing presently that any farmer in Grenada, as a member of the Cocoa Association or the Nutmeg Association, has in their possession that gives them authority to the assets of the Nutmeg Association or the Cocoa Association.
And the merger or liberalization.
They are a little different. And I was going to explain
well, the both of them, would that, and as you said, the only asset that they have is the piece of land that they own. Now, would the merger or the liberalization affect any of that?
No, it's not going to change it in its current construct.
Okay.
Now, liberalization simply means opening up the market. Remember telecommunication liberalization?
Yep.
Remember when we had only once, it was called Grentel.
And then cable and wireless.
Then cable and wireless, and they were the sole provider of telecommunications in Grenada.
Right.
And the government sought to liberalize it, to open up the market so that you had others coming in, which is not the best example for cocoa or nutmeg in this instance.
Right.
But I'm talking benefits now.
Right.
We as the consumers benefited when other players came into the market because the price went down. Today, based on the legislation that governs the association, once you become a nutmeg producer, you have to sell your raw product to the association. You must get a license from them if you have to do secondary products, value added. I mean, there are some little cottage industries where people make nutmeg jams, they do different little things that they probably don't get a license. Now, if a man says to me, Bola, you have 5 acres of cocoa or 5 acres of nutmeg, you are certified as an organic farmer. You don't use the chemicals, and I would want to purchase your cocoa because it's organically produced. The Cocoa Association can take me to task because I'm supposed to sell to them. But I was inquiring, and as far as I understand, I hope I am not wrong, that there is not a separate price paid to farmers for organically produced cocoa or nutmegs. And they do not have the authority to sell to anybody else. So even if there is an offer, and I think cocoa sells at about $1.50 or so per pound when it's wet, and about $2 or $2.50 when it's dry. Nutmegs is about $3. They are about $3.50 a pound, wet or dry. But there's nothing to differentiate organic or non-organic. And we know the world over, a lot of people are going for organically produced stuff. Only where you use the, the pen manure and so on, no artificial stuff, no extra chemicals and so on. So even if I can negotiate within or outside of Grenada as a farmer,
Right.
a very healthy and profitable price for my organically produced nutmeg or cocoa, it may not happen because the industry and the market is not liberalized. So what liberalization means is opening it up, opening up the market so other players can come in, other buyers can come in. There will be greater freedom and choices who I sell to. Now, there's going to be the merger, and there'll still be the association. And I have not studied in its completeness the draft legislation that got leaked out, which was supposed to be seen only by a committee whose name I also have, fortunately, that was put together in 2020. And that's a separate committee to the one that I spoke about in 2017 that gave all these thing on that 6-page document. There's a new committee that was put together, and it's called the Merger Oversight Committee, consisting of 5 members, which is chaired by a gentleman called Mr. Derek Charles, who works, I know, with ICA. Then there is an Inspector Rebecca Jones, who is a member of the committee as the secretary. We have Mr. Teddy St. Louis as the attorney of law with the legal mind to sit with the committee, so whatever you're discussing. Mr. Christopher Williams, who is the chairman of the Grenada Cocoa Association. He's a pastor, I know him very well. And same Mr. Leo Keto, who was the chairman of that committee since 2017, is the chairman of the GCNA. These are the 5 people that are on that committee. And then you have Dr. Linus Spencer Thomas, who is the consultant that they can refer to if they want to get other things. And the purpose of this committee is to overlook again, to once again relook what are the pros and cons, to look at that draft legislation and make recommendations back to the legal department or through the minister and say, look, but in the legislation, minister, it says X, Y, Z, and as a committee, we do not believe that that will work well for us. Or they have Mr. St. Louis there as a legal mind who they can first discuss with, and if need be, take it further. Now, Mr. Christopher is there, Williams, to represent the cocoa farmers. He's the chairman of the association. So he, in turn, takes what he hears from them, go to the committee and say, hey, item 3, paragraph what, page what of that legislation wouldn't work well for our farmers, you know. The cocoa farmers do not feel that that piece here will serve them well, because what is important is what's best for the farmers, not for my pocket as a manager or a chairman or what perks I'm getting. So I hear this whole thing about government want to take over. What will government do? The philosophy of Dr. Mitchell as the leader of government, as the prime minister of this country, I have heard it many times, and so too I believe many Grenadians have heard him say that government has never run anything proper. He says that. He's not proud of it. And so he doesn't believe that government should run. With whatever they have, he always talk now these days, they don't talk so much about commercialization, they talk about PPP, having a public-private partnership. Why would you want to take something that is being operated and let government run it? No, he's saying that, look, for over 70 years, we've been running, making a lot of mistakes, having a lot of fallouts. I have copies here in my possession of amended legislation by the Cocoa Association, where they speak in the amendment of having a reserve. A reserve, so that when things are not right on the international market and prices should fall, they have that reserve that they can dip into to support prices. But guess what? If 1 week pass and they couldn't sell, as we see now with COVID-19 that they can't sell, they run to government for a bailout. If 1 month pass and the prices drop on the international market, they say, look, we have to cut prices to the farmers because we have no reserve. We have nothing prepared for lean days. If they have to go into an investment, they can. Listen, I have heard from my saying, oh, well, the government is telling lies. They have not given anything to the association, and they're talking about money. Here is a copy of a document that went to the chairman, Mr. Christopher Williams, of the Cocoa Association. Yes? And in that document, it says, in response to the GCA's request for financial support due to the impact of COVID-19, the ministry hereby informs you that Cabinet at its meeting on such and such time, conclusion, whatever, did approve a grant of 1 million EC dollars. The grant is to be used as price support for the purchase of cocoa. Direct support, nothing else. What it is saying is that government cares and concerns about the farmers, the cocoa farmers, so much that we do not want you to drop the price you're paying to them at this time. Things are already tough. Yes? You said you can't sell the cocoa on the international market and you are cash strapped. We are going to give to you $1 million to make sure that you continue to purchase the cocoa from the farmers at the same price you have been purchasing it prior to COVID-19. Right? And it also says we are giving, in addition to the grant, which is money we're giving you, $1 million, 1 million in loan. 6 years is the loan period. 1.5% interest. 1 year moratorium so that for the next year, once you receive the money, you don't have to pay anything, and that you must use the fixed asset as thing. GCNA must communicate to farmers the amount of grant support provided by government and the purpose for which it was provided. That is what the letter says clearly. However, and I heard PS this morning, he was with 93.3, saying that to date, and that letter went to them was printed on the 18th of June 2020. To date, they have not responded to government to say we accept or we don't accept. Similarly, prior to them, because their request and proposal came in after the Nutmeg Association, but the Nutmeg did also approach government, and government in a similar way said, look, we are going to give you 1 million as grant for price support for the nutmeg farmers. So you must continue to purchase the nutmeg, whether you can sell it on the international market or not. Purchase it, don't leave it in the farmer's hand. That $1 million is to support that. And we are also giving you $2 million as a loan. Similar conditions, 1.5% interest. 9 years in that instance, 2 years moratorium, and 7 years to repay the principal at 1.5% interest. So when farmers say, and people are being told that government is lying, they're not. But that is only recent. That is only a month or 2 months ago. But there were prior occasions. I could recall in 2017 when the Grenada Cocoa Association was having difficulties with the prices that they were getting internationally. They said to the then Minister of Agriculture, we will have to drop prices that we pay to the farmers, which is very limited. And the farmers must know that. They said we'll have to cut prices because the kind of monies that we're getting on the international market cannot support the price we're paying. Where is the reserve that you talk about in your legislation? You amended the legislation to say there must be a reserve. We never heard about it. Or if it is, what has happened to it? We don't know. These are the things you have to discuss with the farmers. They said so. The government then said, look, at this time, with what that limited amount of money is getting per pound for cocoa, when you drop it by 50 cents or $1 or what will you get? Absolutely nothing. They said, well, what can we do? We don't have any money and we can't face the banks because we are into overdraft. Right? We can't get any more than what we're getting. Government in 2017 provided a $3 million loan to the Cocoa Association. 3% interest, 5 years to repay. The only thing that was repaid so far is a piece of property that they had in Mount Horn that the Minister for Social Development was getting grant funding to build a sort of daycare center and what they call it now, not protection, but there's a different name. They don't call them daycare again. There's a new name that they refer to them. Child Development Center, I think that's what they call them now. Right? And then they approached the association and said, look, you have that piece of asset. It's a piece of land and a almost demolished building that was there that was built for them by Cedar. You see, and if you go back into the history, the Canadian people built it. And it was referred to as the Cocoa Rehabilitation Project in the early 80s. The land that it was built on belongs to government.
Right.
It's government land. There's no documentation to show that the Cocoa Association has ownership of the land. But government said, look, value that property, land, and the ruins that remain. They gave a valuation of $1 million for it, with the hope that government was going to pay that $1 million. And government said, no, you are indebted to us, $3 million, which we loaned you. You have not paid anything yet. So we'll write off $1 million against that loan. So they still owe $2 million to government.
Right.
But you would hear farmers saying, oh, government gave a grant and then turned it into a loan. But how could you give a grant and turn it into a loan? And the document is sitting there with the signatures of your representatives on the board, agreeing to repay at what rate of interest and time span. So it can't be a grant. If you sign to it saying you will repay, it must be a loan.
It must be a loan.
Also, in the early 20s, around 2003, 2004, thereabout, the date doesn't stick in my mind, the Grenada Cooperative Nutmeg Association came to government, this same NNP government, saying, look, for a number of years now, we have not been able to pay a back pay to our farmers. Well, why can't you pay back pay? Because the legislation says that quite clear that a back pay is being paid when there is a surplus made on the business, on the trading, right? So I hear our young senator talking about the association has been doing so well and government has been praising them. Of course, government will praise you when you do well. But if you have been doing so well, how comes year after year you are trading and doing business and you cannot have a surplus to pay any back pay? Government then gave a loan of $5 million to the Nutmeg Association to pay a back pay to the farmers. Because they pleaded that for another year we cannot go to the farmers and tell them nothing for them. The year has been bad. We need to give them something. They took a loan, which they are not paying back also. So as a result, government is renting a couple of offices from that building that they have in Lagoon Road and is marking off the rental amount on a monthly basis against that loan. I mean, we can go back into the history. Government has been constantly bailing out. Look, these associations operate. They do not pay a team or a worker to propagate one cocoa plant or one nutmeg plant. All the propagation is being done by the government and paid for by the government. So much so that after Hurricane Ivan, government assumed the responsibility of paying all the workers that they had at the Bullhorn station. But went further than that. When these people retired, and it should have been the responsibility of the Grenada Cocoa Association, who hired them and was paying them, and government took over the payment because they were in a precarious position after Hurricane Ivan, had to pay them off their sovereigns when they retired. This same government paid it off. So how come today you want to say that the government is being high-handed and don't care? The government is caring. That's why the government is saying, you are not managing and running this thing properly. The farmers are not getting the benefit they deserve. Let us try something different, something that's been on the table since in the 90s.
Right.
The merger, they themselves accepted the fact. They themselves said that government should not take a passive approach, but be more present and more forceful with the amalgamation, with the merger. And today it's happening. These same people are saying, oh, well, government is acting too high-handed. No, there are several other bits of document that speak about people. Merger, there was a meeting of the Cocoa Association sometime, and I'll get the date for you. The fourth regular meeting that they held in January, just January of 2020, right? And when the issue of merger came up, they put together an oversight committee. The names of the GCA representative would be Mr. Christopher Williams, who is the chairman of the association, and Mr. Fabian Antoine on the merger oversight committee. And that was submitted to the Minister for Agriculture via a letter dated 17 December. That was reported in the meeting in 2020, January of 2020, sent 17 December 2019. They sent those names to the minister. They were on the oversight committee to speak to the merger. And that was the same committee that they told, listen, go speak to the farmers, because they highlighted that the farmers must be at the forefront. Go start having your area meetings and tell the farmers what the intentions are. So how could it be high-handed and hijacking when all along you have been very open, asking them? They have been the representatives. So they must speak to the farmers and say what has happened and stop making this thing look as though somebody have some kind of sinister ideas. I'm not saying that everything the government presents you would like it, but that's why you have those committees. That's why the committees are there, and to discuss internally. Look, the thing says draft. The bill says draft all over it, you know. In the middle of the page, page by page, 36 pages. Every single page have it marked draft, you know. Every page you go through. And that was meant to be discussed internally by the committee. Let's look at it. This is what the legal people are proposing that the legislation look like if there is to be a merger. Mm-hmm. There are things you may agree with. There are things you may want to strengthen. There are things you may want to change. There are things you may want to be moved out completely. But that's why you have the committee. So why take it and put it in the media and make it look as though it's a final document and you are being forced? And that is absolutely not true.
Right. Now, Mr. Bola, I want to ask, because I have a few questions on the live, and they're basically asking the same thing. The merger and liberalization of cocoa and nutmeg, what will that mean for the individual farmer?
Okay. So as I've explained before, liberalization means that now people would be freer to sell their produce for a better price if they are getting a better price than what the association is giving.
So let me ask this. Yesterday, a gentleman called and he spoke about an issue regarding a gentleman who owned a company in St. Andrew, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Webb.
Joel Webb, yes.
Right.
Course,
Do you have any further insight on this issue? And does
well,
that fall
the gentleman was correct. Mr. Webb came and wanted to, and I don't know the reasons why the association was not prepared to deal with Mr. Webb to sell him the produce. It was value added. Just like in Diamond, you have the Cocoa Association now doing chocolates, taking it from the raw material into a value added product. Mr. Webb was going to use our nutmegs to do pure nutmeg oils and other stuff. And the association wasn't selling to him, and I don't know why and the configuration. I don't know what was happening. And then he eventually started buying directly from farmers and was paying a price almost 1.5 times what the association was paying to farmers. So around the time, whether the association was paying $2 or $3, what it was, and I'm not fixed on the price, and he was paying $5 or $6 to the farmers directly. That brought conflict, legal issues, because based on the association's ordinance, all nutmeg should be sold to the association, and there were court matters and different things like that. Eventually, I think the gentleman got frustrated and so and sold the company. A Grenadian must have bought it from him, and that person encountered very, very similar issues. In fact, there was one time that it was rumored that the association said to the second buyer, not Mr. Webb, that, look, if we are to supply you, because he wanted a contract with them to say you must supply me X amount of nutmeg, so I can keep the factory at full operation because I have sales for the product.
Right.
That in order for him to get that, he must give them a 50% share in the thing. And that could be denied. I don't know, because we have to speak to the principals involved, both the association and, of course, that gentleman. So, yes, there's that saga, there's that story that one can investigate and get into to show how, over the years, we have missed a lot of opportunities. The lack of, foresight and good managerial principles, and so we have lost that. But even though they are talking liberalization, it comes with conditions, because even in the draft legislation, it speaks to the issue of licensing. Right. So that before you can sell to anybody, you must get a license. Mm-hmm. The Cocoa Association, in its amended legislation, speak to the issue of licensing as well. That if a person in this present construct, even before merger, wants to sell to a third party, they must apply to the association. I think there's a similar thing with the nutmeg for a license. And I have known of an individual who said to me that they had applied for a license to sell some nutmegs outside of Grenada as organic nutmegs for very, very, very good returns. And after 3 months, the association did not even respond to them to say, well, yes, you can have the license, or it is being denied. So I'm saying that a lot of what liberalization and merger is asking for are things that both associations already know about and have in their ordinance amended, though, as principles that they should follow and work with.
Right. Now, we're going to start opening the line, so people wanting to contribute to the conversation can do so. And the number to call is 440-7377. And if you are in the diaspora and you want to give us a call, it's 347-329-3101. Remember, we are close to the close of the program, so keep your comments or questions very precise and to the point. All right? So, Mr. Bola, there are advantages for the farmer, because as you said, there was a review done by the Cocoa Association and the Nutmeg Association in 2017 that outlines the pros and the cons of this merger, this possible merger. However, in what you were reading, in much of it, I didn't hear how this will directly affect the farmers themselves. I hear a lot about how it will affect the association, the pros for the association, the cons for the association. But I'm not hearing about the pros and cons for the actual farmer, because in conversation and in information that is being put out there, I read a document by the NDC, I read a document by the new senator for the opposition, who in their deliberation made mention that this is going to affect farmers.
But how?
How exactly? However, in the document prepared by the GCNA and GCA, there is really no mention of the farmers. They mention that the assets would be affected, but what assets really does the farmer own as it relates to GCNA and GCA?
But in the new legislation proposed, if there's a merger, it speaks to the fact that whatever asset either of owns will go into the newly formed. So whatever you call it. So now Nutmeg have assets, Cocoa have assets. Now, when you merge, those assets will form part of the assets that the new organization will own.
Right.
The asset doesn't go to me or to you or to government. It stays within the organization, just as it has been. Now, there has always been a lot of quarrel about the fact, and I remember going to several of the AGM, especially of the Nutmeg, and farmers raising the issue that we don't have any shares in this thing.
Right.
We don't own anything in that.
That was raised yesterday.
If I
as well.
die tomorrow, which is a fact, but it is not an easy thing, and I know that some attempts has been made before with the concurrence of the association to do what was referred to and what was suggested by one legal mind as capitalization of the industry, where they would work out some kind of formula to determine what amount of shares you have. Now remember, you have over 7,000 registered farmers. Could be more, growing nutmegs, growing cocoa. How do you determine what level of shares I have as opposed to you? I have 5 acres of land, you have 2 acres.
Right.
Right? Do we do it based on acreage? Based on the mass of land we own? Do we do it by supply? Because you may have 2 acres, but because you take better care, you fertilize, you prune, you clean, you may be selling more nutmegs than me who have 5 acres.
Right.
Because I'm more lackadaisical. I may go to my land once a month. So I lose a lot of my produce. Right? So do we then capitalize and say, you have more shares in the association than I do because you sell more? And if that is the case, when 2 years down the road, I decide, or 1 year or 6 months after, let me clean up my land, let me pay more attention, and my 5 acres start producing more than your 2 acres, how do we then deal with that? So there are a lot of intricacies that need to be sorted out. And so capitalization is one of the things that was on the table for discussion you don't hear a lot about now, which is totally different to liberalization and different again to merger. Merger is just saying, look, have one streamlined operation that governs both associations. Yes? Because 80%, as they highlighted in their own work and their own words, of the farmers who grow nutmeg grows cocoa.
I have a comment here on the live that says, take a look at the 2010-2015 Grenada Nutmeg Development Strategy. This document has within it the deficiencies within the sector and suggestive ways of improving the industry.
Of course, because the committee that was put together with representation from cocoa, representation from nutmeg, legal representation, and the Ministry of Agriculture, they have that to their disposal. It's to look, it's to discuss, it's to highlight, it's to say, look, we can do this, we shouldn't do that, we better go this way or that way. And that would not be just a strategy now for nutmeg, but as was suggested by Dr. Macaulay from Compete Caribbean in 2015, you can put all of the spices.
Right. Now let's talk about benefits for the farmers. What are the possible, because we won't see firsthand what the benefits are, but what would be the possible, in your view, benefits or advantages for the farmers with this merger and liberalization?
Cost cutting is one. You'll cut costs. You'd be in a better position to invest. And they highlighted that neither of the associations have the level of capital that they need to invest into the industry, right? But if you come together and the assets are brought together, you have higher value for one entity. Yes? The money that you're paying one manager in cocoa and one manager in nutmeg, of course, some people may say, but look, you're going to increase employment by doing that. But when liberalization of the telecommunication industry came, some people say, well, look, cable and wireless would have to lay off some people now, so that thing is not good for us. But these same people that was laid off were able to form smaller companies that are now doing servicing of telephones and lines and so for the same companies that are now operating.
Mm-hmm. So it will diversify the market.
You diversify. Mm-hmm. So with liberalizing the market, players who have been in it already and understand may find a niche where they can do better. Because now, listen, we are committed to one set of buyers that pays us what they feel, right? Because they are our middlemen. I recall, as Minister of Agriculture, I was told by the same chairman that is in Cocoa Association now, that they are getting, and the same manager there, that they were getting a price that was 30% higher than other cocoa producing nations on the world market for our cocoa, because our cocoa is being traded as fine flavored cocoa.
Right.
So you had Trinidad producing, St. Vincent is producing. Now you have Ghana, which is the largest producer in Africa of cocoa, selling on the world market. But I was told and made to believe that, listen, with all of this cocoa, we are doing better in terms of price because our flavor, we are fine flavored cocoa. We have the best cocoa. So whoever is making chocolate or doing whatever must get at least a 10% of our cocoa to mix with the mass orders that they have in order to bring out that flavor, right? Now, if that is the case, why do we need an agent? If we are the best and we have the best commodity, we should be able to negotiate the best price on our own.
Right.
Because we are in demand.
Right.
We have been told that our nutmegs are the best also. God save the day. India now is the highest producer. Used to be Indonesia, and Grenada was second. India is number one producer of nutmegs now in the world. However, though, almost all of the nutmegs that they produce, they use it internally.
Right.
Right? So they're not on the world market competing with us. Now, if they were, maybe, I don't know, and I hope never, Grenada's nutmeg would have been pushed aside. Because India is the world's largest producer now. Indonesia is still producing quite a lot. Vietnam is into the deal, producing nutmeg. Because remember, originally nutmeg came from the Far East.
Right.
Right? We have been very fortunate because of our type of soil.
Right.
You know, we have special. Our nutmegs become special. But we have not harnessed that over the years. I recall as minister, I sat with the board of the Nutmeg Association at one time, and I said, listen, I know if I am a nutmeg farmer, I want the highest front up price for my nutmeg. You paying whatever now, $3, $4, $5, I wish I can get 10 because it will do me better as a farmer.
Right.
And I'm still looking forward to a back pay at the end of the day. But I said the reason why you were voted in to be a board is because you have to manage my expectation and manage the industry. So when it comes to you making a surplus at the end of the day, why do you then just cut out a large size of it and say back pay? Yes, the farmers must get back pay, and I don't fault them for wanting it. Make noise for your back pay. But the board must be in a position to say to us, listen, we have $5 million as a surplus, but we cannot and will not share all of that to you as back pay. And here's why. We're going to share 2.5 million, and I'm just using figures randomly. We're going to put 5.5 of a million into a scholarship fund. From since 1947 to now, I asked the board, have you invested in educating any one of your farmers' children? Not just to say, well, we gave a scholarship to a farmer child, but to have that child go out to university and study something specific to the nutmeg industry. Right. So they can come back here and lend now the expertise to you. Right? So a lot of the problems that we have had over the years, we can now deal with it. A lot of the problems we have in marketing, we can deal with it because we contributed to someone who has been in the industry. So I hear people talk, oh, a lot of farmers, a lot of people have been educated as a result of coconut milk. Sure, and they will continue to be. There is nothing in the merger that says when you merge, your land will be taken away from you, so you no longer will be able to sell nutmeg or sell cocoa. Right. And these are the facts that we must bring to the farmers. In fact, what we are saying is, and what the merger is hoping, is that you will get even better prices for your produce. So you will be able to do more. And I said to the board, what have we done with research and development over all these years? We still plant nutmeg in Grenada and not sure at the end of the day, 3-4 years after, whether that tree will be a male nutmeg or a female nutmeg. Farmers still, up to today, if they have 50 spaces in the garden where they can plant nutmegs, may have to buy 100 trees. Because one of the practice is to plant 2 trees close together. So they come up side by side, and you may have to cut one at the end of the day because one may be a male, one may be a female. Both may be males. There was a recent development where a farmer, I knew the name, planted about 2 acres, and some 70 or 80% end up being male.
Oh, no.
Cardi came into the picture saying that they would start working with them to highlight. There is technology that can tell you from the time you propagate whether a plant will be male or female, right? So there could be a lot of cost saving, but we have not invested into the very thing we say that is so important to us. An association been in existence for 70 years have not spent 1 cent. I recall some years ago, a lot of our good, productive nutmeg trees were dying from something we simply refer to as the nutmeg wilt. The government of Grenada got an expert to come in, paid them to look at it. And they said it was a disease similar to what was affecting apple trees. There was and they, I think, prescribed something that we can use to save it. A first batch of the chemical was brought in by the government. And up to today, not another ounce was brought in because the association said they had no money to bring it in. The very trees that was producing the nutmeg that you saying no, that you want to protect from government hands, were dying, and you said you didn't have money to bring in the chemical after government brought in an expert that was able to identify what the problem was. So I mean, there are a lot of issues that has been happening over the years, and we cannot be blind to it because it's there to our eyes. Now, I am not saying that everything proposed in the merger is going to work perfect, but we still have an opportunity. There is an oversight committee not made up of people who are biased to the government, made up of members, and of course the chairperson of both nutmeg and cocoa, right? Of a gentleman who works with ICA, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. So he doesn't have to have a bias for the government side. His interest must be with farming and farmers. And I know he has an interest in farming and farmers because as the minister, when I went to Suriname to a Caribbean week of agriculture, I sat with the international chairperson of ICA and told them the problems we were having with coconuts in Grenada. That we were losing a lot of our trees, save and except what fell as a result of Hurricane Ivan. We had a lot of invasive species of palm mites and little yellowing, and so that were killing our coconut trees. Right. And how could they help us? And they negotiated with Mexico for us to get 5,000 coconut plants. We got half of that came in, and it was coordinated by same Mr. Derek Charles, because he has an interest in Grenada. It was placed in Maribo for acclimatization and distributed to farmers. There's still another 2,500 trees that need to come of both types, the tall ones for coconut and of course thing. They are disease resistant coconut. Yeah? So I know he has an interest. You have Mr. St. Louis, who is a legal mind, not working with the legal department in government. He's not working with the Ministry of Legal Affairs. He's an independent private operator that doesn't have to take government side, but is there to and in fact, I didn't know you, Mr. St. Louis has already done a piece, He wrote up a piece of what he considered to be the way to go forward with which I have here. You know. The way to go forward with a whole piece, you know, based on the proposed GCNA merger, where he spoke about, he said they can set up a structure similar to that of the Marketing National and Importing Board. He went further to say, and that is the legal mind, and the thing, went further to say here, he said, look, there exists in our laws a Fresh Produce Export Act, right? A Fresh Produce Export Act, which deals with the standards an exporter of fresh produce will have to meet in order to export our produce. These standards should apply to all agricultural produce intended for export in order to maintain Grenada's reputation and the quality of goods, the quality and safety of goods, and the standards that we want to set out internationally. So here the legal mind is saying, do you have a call?
Yes, I do.
Take the call.
And I want to take this call because it's, good morning. Hello, good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
I'm just calling. I'm listening to the program, and I heard Mr. Bowler have been saying something about the merger of the GCNA and the GCA.
Mm-hmm.
When you're referring to the merger, is it the overheads that you're trying to cut down?
Well, that's part of it, yes. They believe that if they are merged together, and as was said by a committee set up by the Cocoa Association with people from both cocoa and nutmeg, they said, look, we are already cooperating in a lot of areas. The extension division that works with cocoa, works with nutmeg, they said for themselves, that 80% of the people who produce nutmeg produce cocoa. There was a time for about a year or two that the person who managed nutmeg also managed cocoa.
Mr. Bowler, I'm not hearing you clearly on the phone.
Okay, so do you have another question that you want to ask, or can we or can you listen over the radio for the answer?
Okay, another thing that I want to say again, I just want to encourage the farmers. Maybe it's not maybe I'm not supposed to do that, but I'm going to take the opportunity to do it. Now, the farmers, from what I've been listening, I heard that the farmers have their representatives sitting on the committee with Mr. Charles and Pastor Williams and whoever is there. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to find out, in terms of the president of the Cocoa Association, from my knowledge, elderly people tend to forget stuff. I'm trying to find out if they never thought about changing the head of that association. And another thing that we tend to, as a small business person, that I realize that normally happens in the associations, and so the people that are in charge of them, they normally come out and give us wrong information so that we will fight among ourselves so that they will continue being in charge. So I want to encourage the farmers to please be observant and be vigilant when they have their representatives who always wants to be in power. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome with your comments. And of course, the Oversight Committee, like I said, do have representation. So Pastor Williams, Christopher Williams, is the chairman, or if you want to call him the president of the Cocoa Association. So he represents the cocoa farmers. And Mr. Leo Keto is the chairman, or if you want to call him the president as well, of the Nutmeg Association. And they have said that is now the association, that 80% of the people who grow cocoa also grow nutmeg. So in other words, 80% of the nutmeg and cocoa farmers in Grenada have two representatives, right? But also, it is true that Mr. Keto, who is the chairman of the Nutmeg Association, is also a director on the Cocoa Association. So they wear both hats, right? Yes, they have cited that there would be a lot of cost-saving measures, and so rather than you have two managers and two accountants and two secretary and two or this and two that, one for cocoa, one for nutmeg, it would be one. And I did highlight before that they said the agents who work for them in Europe work for both associations and being paid by both associations. So now if you have an amalgamation or a merger, as it's been called, that could be just one fee being paid.
All right, we have another caller on the line. Caller, we are strapped for time and we want to make sure everybody gets in. So can you please keep your comments straight and to the point?
Oh my God, I find you talking like if you know it's me and you're throwing words.
You lost half a minute there already.
Good afternoon, good day, gentlemen, Miss Duncan and Mr. Bulla.
Yes,
No,
sir.
Mr. Bulla, you just mentioned a name there, Mr. Cato.
Yes, sir.
And I'm kind of surprised that, now, is this the Cato is this the Mr. Cato that has been in this, on this board, let me say, for the last 10 years?
Well, I'm not sure if it's 10, but he has been there definitely for 5 years or so.
All right. Is this the only Cato that has been on in the executive in this association?
That I know of, yes.
Okay. I'm going to leave that there. Now, Mr. Boland, the reason why I'm so supportive of the initiative that has been put forward now, and people trying to spin it in all different directions. The bottom line is, the different association, whether it was cocoa, nutmeg, and banana, the bottom line is they have not served the farmers well. And to that, it is very easy for me as a non-farmer to say that the different executives and boards of this association have failed the members. They elected people into this position that was not business oriented. I will wrap up here. Do you know, sir, that Cocoa Association don't have an acre of land to sell? Not to sell, not to lease. Whether and banana association and nutmeg, they don't have no land to sell, no land to lease, no land to do nothing. What I'm trying to say is that how come these folks did not realize that they was in the land business, and the more land you have, is the more of the product you can produce that will bring greater income to those who work the land. How come they have nothing? Give me a second here. Just imagine, just sometime to buy the produce, they have to seek assistance from the government. And you're telling me that people are expressing a negative opinion when it comes to what is being suggested now in terms of giving farmer a bigger say, a better say, and a higher returns on what they produce. It's just unfair, to farmers, and farmers have to see it for what it is. If something is being suggested to you now, brothers and sisters, that can give you bigger and better returns on your product than what you're getting now, think of it seriously. Mr. Bola and Ms. Duncan, have a pleasant weekend.
Well, we thank you for your comments.
Mr. Bola, before you, because we strapped for time, but I want to make a quick statement to our viewers and our listeners. I'm not sure if you saw it, but I saw it, that there has been a lot of talk about, and the NDC, they did an initiative where they were delivering food, lunches, to students in school. Now, I myself thought it was a good initiative. However, given the situation that we are in, I really thought a little bit more thought could have been put into it, because you're talking about a group of people delivering food to all of the school. Well, I guess that's their goal, to deliver all of the schools for children. However, you have to look at the time, and you have to look at the circumstance where possible contamination, you understand, possible spread, and these things. Not that it's not a good idea. I think it's a wonderful idea. However, is this the right time? But that's not the point. The point is, during the past day or two, there has been talk that the Minister of Education and Ministry of Education has stopped them or forced them to stop with the delivery of food. And I just got some information here, and I thought I should announce it, that this is not true. This is absolutely false. And this is coming from an education official. And to let our viewers and listeners know that on Monday, We will be touching the topic. So let everybody who has to talk, and you see, that is why sometimes we wait. Some people need to talk in the situation of GCNA and GCA. Everybody talked. Everybody spoke and gave their piece. But look at the information that you have just provided. You know, the facts as it relates to the issue. You know, and one thing I always say, the facts can never, ever, ever, ever be contested because it is fact. You know, so sometimes you have to wait and let people talk. Let them say.
It could be contested, but it won't win.
It won't win, you know, and let people say what they need to say. And then you come and tell them what the facts are. And let them decide for themselves what they choose to believe. So on Monday, guys, we will be addressing this allegation that the Minister of Education stopped the NDC, because that's all they came out and told us. They didn't provide any proof, any facts as to how it was done, who did it, what did they say exactly that stopped you or prevented you from doing that. So we will see very soon, and we will hear very soon about that. But Mr. Bola, we are strapped for time, so do you have any closing words as it relates to the issue?
I just simply want to say to people that the facts are out there, right? As one of the callers said, the farmers need to be told the truth. And I'm not certain that all of our farmers either understand what they're being told or are being told the facts as they are. You know, a lot of things are sugar-coated. Some things are misrepresented, I believe, because sometimes you hear what you hear from some people, you start asking yourself, where did that come from? So let's be honest with ourselves and with each other. The government is not trying to take over or hijack anything. We're just trying to make sure, based on what I understand, and somebody may understand it differently, to cut costs, to bring greater benefits to farmers, to give us the best possible edge to be competitive. And of course, even before that happens, the government has said, and the Minister of Agriculture has said, put this oversight committee in place, which consists of people from both associations representing the two sets of farmers, people from the ministry, people from the legal fraternity, and let's look at what is being proposed, make suggestions, come back, go talk to farmers, hear the input, and let's put everything together so at the end of the day, we have a package that everyone may not agree with, but at least have a thorough understanding of. Do have a good weekend, everybody. Take care of yourself.
All right, guys. So that's why we said yesterday, it's important for you to mind your business, and mind your business in the sense of know what's going on around you. Get the facts so you are able to make an objective, factual decision on a topic. Guys, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. In whatever you say and whatever you do, be safe, be secure. We always want to be talking with you and never about you. Please do enjoy the remainder of your day.
You're listening to Hard Talk Grenada via www.hardtalkgrenada.com.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new national party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.